Hi guys, Miss Francis here. Today I'd like to go through the details of glycolysis with you. Yesterday we looked at an overview of cellular respiration and we mentioned that it occurs in 5 metabolic stages, the first of which is glycolysis. So glycolysis is actually the beginning of both aerobic and anaerobic respiration. So it's going to occur in the cytoplasm or the cytosol because all organisms have a cytoplasm. Glycolysis involves changing a 6-carbon sugar, glucose, into 2 3-carbon sugars called pyruvate or pyruvic acid. In order to do glycolysis, it requires 2 ATPs. I'm going to make 4 ATP, so my net ATP gain is 2. I'm also going to make 2 NADHs. So let's take a closer look at glycolysis. During glycolysis, glucose, a 6-carbon sugar, is going to be split into 2 3-carbon sugars known as pyruvate or pyruvic acid. Those smaller sugars are then going to be used in turn for the next stage of cellular respiration. Now, you don't need to memorize the 10 steps in glycolysis. However, you do need to know certain key steps. There are 2 phases involved in glycolysis. So I already said glycolysis occurs in the cytoplasm. The first phase is the energy investment phase, and that involves 5 steps. This energy payoff also involves 5 steps. But let's explore this energy investment phase first. So glucose, which is C6H12O6, is our starting reactant. It's a 6-carbon sugar. I need 2 ATP in order to start glycolysis. During the energy payoff phase, I produce 4 ATP as well as 2 NADH. And remember, those NADH are those electron energy carriers that are used throughout the various stages of cellular respiration. So our net totals, we end up with 2 pyruvates, 2 3-carbon sugars. We end up with 2 ATPs, and we end up with 2 NADHs. So now let's look at the specific steps involved in glycolysis. Here is the energy investment phase, and this involves 4 steps. The first step we know is that starting reactant glucose using 1, 2 ATPs as the activation energy. And at the end of this investment phase, you're going to end up with glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, which is also known as G3P. Moving on to the energy payoff phase, now I can see that I have made 2 NADHs, I have made 2 ATPs, and I make another 2 ATPs, and I end up with 2 pyruvates, 2 3-carbon sugars. This is known as substrate level phosphorylation, because a phosphate is taken right off of a substrate and given to ADP to produce ATP. So the yield of ATP in glycolysis is the result of what's called substrate level phosphorylation, where the enzyme transfers a phosphate group for an organic molecule for or from that substrate directly to ADP to give us ATP. So what do you really need to remember about glycolysis? You don't need to know all those 10 steps, but you do need to know that the activation reactant, the process starts with 1 glucose, which we know is a 6-carbon sugar. right? Because glucose is C6H12O6. The net yield is 2 ATP and 2 NADH, where no carbon dioxide is produced during glycolysis. Glycolysis occurs whether oxygen is present or not. So glycolysis is the first stage in anaerobic and aerobic respiration. Lastly, glycolysis takes place in the cytoplasm, and this makes sense since all cells have cytoplasm. The next time I talk to you, we're going to explore the different types of cellular respiration: aerobic respiration, which is cellular respiration with oxygen, and anaerobic respiration, which is respiration without oxygen. Before we move on to our discussion of anaerobic and aerobic respiration, though, I'd like to start filling out this flowchart. So after every stage of cellular respiration, we'll add to this flowchart, just like we did with our cellular communication unit. So you've got your foldable, you've got your notes, and now you have this flowchart as another resource for you to use. So first of all, glycolysis takes place in the cytoplasm, and it involves breaking down glucose, which has the chemical formula of C6H12O6. It's a 6-carbon sugar, into 2 pyruvates. Pyruvate is also called pyruvic acid. Now, how many ATPs are required to activate glycolysis? 2. And how many ATPs are made during glycolysis? 4, which gives us a net gain of 2 ATPs. Furthermore, we're going to get 2 NADHs. So this is known as a redox reaction because glucose is going to be oxidized, whereas NADH, this is the reduced form of NAD. So it has been reduced, hence the name redox reaction.